recent months, it seems to be heating up more so than before, possibly because of Bitcoin kind of stabilizing, if you will, or just increased institutional acceptance of Bitcoin. So we see the ETFs gobbling up more Bitcoin. So these seem to be indicating that Bitcoin is here to stay.
Samson Mow emphasizes that Bitcoin's rising price will make it increasingly difficult for people to continue relying on fiat currencies. As Bitcoin climbs to values like $1 million or even $5 million per coin, individuals will question the rationale of being paid in depreciating currencies like pesos or yen. Historically, fiat currencies have always faced devaluation over time. Bitcoin, on the other hand, offers an escape from this endless cycle of inflation and depreciation. For skeptics, seeing Bitcoin rise to significant milestones, like $250,000 and beyond, will shatter misconceptions about it being a fad. Mow highlights how Bitcoin's trajectory from zero to a $250,000 asset in just 2 decades showcases its inevitability. Fiat currencies, with their diminishing purchasing power, cannot hope for a revival in the face of such an alternative.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
As Bitcoin number goes up, then it gets harder and harder to have people accept the fiat, because it's more apparent that when Bitcoin is at 1 million or $5 million a coin, do people still want to get paid in pesos or Canadian dollars or yen? I don't think so, right? Like it's difficult to see it now, although as Bitcoiners we see it, going from zero, whatever we're at now, it kind of shows you like this thing is rapidly increasing and there's no stopping it. And for other people, I think you have to see it. They'll probably need to see it at $250,000 and higher before that realization dawns on them, because you cannot look at this asset class that's gone from zero to $250,000 in 20 years and still say, well, it's just a fad, and the fiat currency that's dropped another 100% in value and purchasing power is going to somehow come back, right? There's a point of no coming back. And I think this is a problem that most of the models for Bitcoin price appreciation miss out on, which is they're projecting for decades. I think it's more like 5 to 10 years, if that. And at some point you just stop accepting fiat, because why would you? Like, when do you stop accepting the German Papier mark, right? You stop at some point. Either you have to reset or use something else, but there is a termination point for fiat currencies. So that is where that goes. But to your other question is, why should we educate governments and politicians on Bitcoin? I think it has to do that we can have better policy come out here to enshrine the rights of Bitcoiners and private property, ownership of property, as we move through this Bitcoin adoption cycle. Because one thing we've learned in past years is that the laws and your rights don't really matter anymore, right? If you take Canada as an example, just a protest induced the government to implement emergency measures, the Emergency Act, which is martial law, right? And well, what rights do you have under martial law? Not many. So anything can be used to attack the population, and the property rights seem to be just an afterthought at that point. But maybe as we work with countries to implement these Bitcoin strategies, we can augment the laws that protect people and protect your Bitcoin. Because there's one thing that's interesting right now, which is, a government can say you have Bitcoin. Maybe they think you did. Maybe you lost it, right? There's the boating accident joke, but what if you really did lose it or was stolen from you, but the government still says you have it and they lock you in a jail or throw you in the gulag? What recourse do you have? Because it's difficult to prove you don't have something. So there's a lot of work that has to be done to better protect Bitcoiners and people in general, because the current laws are not going to cut it. If you look at Bitcoin adjusted for inflation, we haven't really had an all-time high, even though we reached 74, right? That's inflation adjusted for inflation. We haven't hit an all-time high yet. But at the same time, you see all the increasing debt in the U.S. Just let's look at the U.S. Right, national debt is 35 some odd trillion now. Interest to service the debt is surpassed 1 trillion. So how sustainable is that? There should be a direct correlation between the instability and weakness of fiat and the strength of Bitcoin, and we're not seeing it yet. Gold is rallying, Bitcoin is not rallying. So I tend to believe that there is paper Bitcoin being saturated into the market. And I think Willy Woo and Adam Back had a discussion about, is it through derivatives or is it through ETFs? And Adam seems to think not. But there's more than one way to saturate the market with paper Bitcoin. You can have a FTX style naked selling, like selling Bitcoin that you don't even have to suppress the price. And while yes, you have to have enough Bitcoin to facilitate withdrawals, you can also print other things out of thin air if you have a malevolent actor in this space. Like maybe it's altcoins, right? And you print the altcoins to buy Bitcoin, and you kind of are selling Bitcoin that does not exist, but you have enough Bitcoin coming in to meet demands, right? And that would explain kind of why we're stagnant at the 60-ish range, right? Because they're keeping it down, but they can't push it down too much because they still need to buy back to fulfill withdrawals, right? That's my theory. But like, if you ask me, how would I suppress the market? That was how I would do it.
Beyond financial implications, Bitcoin represents a philosophical shift. By decoupling money from centralized control, it restores individual sovereignty. Money becomes a tool for empowerment rather than manipulation. The Bitcoin standard also redefines wealth creation. Nations with abundant natural energy resources can now harness them for mining Bitcoin, creating sustainable economic models. This development challenges the dominance of traditional financial powers and introduces a fairer, decentralized global system.
And the interesting thing is a lot of countries or politicians, they look towards the US for guidance. And we saw this with the ETF. So Hong Kong and Australia, they wanted to wait until the US approved the ETFs, and then they approved theirs. But I think it's going to be the same situation in terms of larger scale Bitcoin adoption at the nation state level. They're going to wait and see what Trump does. And it is very meaningful to have multiple candidates in the race that have talked about Bitcoin and have talked about setting up that strategic Bitcoin reserve. It's somewhere in the order of probably 1 million to 4 million coins. And that's very ambitious. He'll likely move ahead and implement that because Trump likes to do to fulfill his campaign promises. It may not be to the full scope, but he likes to have said, I did that thing that I promised. So if he creates a strategic Bitcoin reserve of even 250,000, that's a big step. And all those other countries that are watching the US will definitely take that as a signal that they should go ahead and move on their Bitcoin strategy. But there's a danger there too, because the first mover always has the biggest advantage. So if you look at the ETFs again as an example, the US has almost 1 million Bitcoin in their ETFs. And then Hong Kong, which launched second, has 10,000 some odd Bitcoin, and Australia has 100 something. So you can see, like, if you wait for the US to make the first move in terms of setting up a Bitcoin strategic reserve, you may not have a lot of Bitcoin down the road. And we do see that competition heating up between all these different countries and entities accumulating. So you have, in addition to the ETFs in the US, you have companies like MicroStrategy, Tether, which are accumulating massive amounts of Bitcoin, and other countries mining Bitcoin like Bhutan. So there's just not a lot of Bitcoin left. And I think perhaps most governments don't fully understand that it's a limited supply, because in the fiat world, it's all unlimited. You can print as much as you want. But with Bitcoin, there's definitely a point at which you cannot compete it and get a lot of Bitcoin. Like, these groups can only lend out money that can be printed easily, right? Creating the SDR does not exist. And unfortunately, it still kind of can be used as a bargaining chip by giving cheap money to these countries. But Bitcoin makes it so that you don't need that anymore. You can actually take a slow, steady, sustainable path to growth by embracing hard money and utilizing energy to mine Bitcoin. So the whole formula for money has changed. Money is now energy and information because Bitcoin is energy information. So you can mine Bitcoin using geothermal or hydro or whatever you have that previously you could not utilize, right? With oil, it's easy. You put it into a bucket or a barrel and you ship it. But with geothermal, what's the incentive? Unless you want to create some energy intensive industry that uses it on site, there's not much you can do. But Bitcoin changes that. And I think it is going to have a massive effect as countries discover this, that, hey, we're actually a rich country, right? And a lot of the countries that have massive geothermal energy reserves are quite poor relatively. So this whole equation is changing the world, and we'll see that playing out to further make these things, these organizations like the IMF and the World Bank, redundant. Money is a very potent form of control. So he who controls the money controls the people. You can incentivize people to do things like build roads. Like if you can print money, you can make them build roads or go fight in wars or do a number of things. And it's also a way to control other countries too. So if they're dependent on your money, not just in Latin America, but in Africa with the CFA franc, you can extract resources. You can extract human resources or physical resources or whatever you want, as long as you control the money. So this is why Bitcoin is so disruptive and so powerful, because it breaks that ability for people to control others. Well, so long as you're holding Bitcoin in your own self-custody and you have your own keys. But you get the idea. It really transforms the entire landscape of the world. And the best part is that it is inevitable. So even if we didn't do anything, this will come to pass. A Bitcoin standard will come to pass because there is no alternative. There's no way a government can save the fiat currency. It means that you'd have to have massive amounts of restraint and discipline to not print, and we know that's not possible.
Samson Mow's vision for Bitcoin paints a future where it stands as the backbone of a new financial order, one built on decentralization, sovereignty, and fairness. While challenges like market manipulation and policy hurdles remain, the momentum is undeniable. For nations, institutions, and individuals, the question is not whether to adopt Bitcoin, but how quickly they can adapt to this inevitable transformation. As we move closer to a Bitcoin standard, the world will witness a profound redefinition of value, energy, and freedom.
Please like and subscribe my channel.